Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another day of nuggets. Our story today is found in John 9, verses 1 to 16, and it's the story of Jesus healing a blind man. Sounds straightforward, right? Just another miracle to prove Jesus' divinity, right? Well, unfortunately, no. It gets a little complicated. Let's start with how this whole thing began. John 9, verse 1 says, "As he, Jesus, went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, 'Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?'" What kind of a question is that? I mean, why in the world did the disciples need to know who sinned? In what way was knowing the answer to that question going to change anything in the disciples' life? Teachers say there are no dumb questions, but in my opinion, this is a dumb question. The Jews at that time believed that sufferings in this life were punishment for sin. And the rabbis went even further in teaching that the kind of suffering you had was indicative of the kind of sin you were guilty of. For example, Samson went after the desire of his eyes, so the Philistines took his eyes out. Absalom was vain about his hair, and his hair led to his death by hanging from it. In fact, even after the fall of Jerusalem, the Jews continued to believe that the type of suffering determined the nature of the guilt. For example, he who would have been sentenced to stoning either falls down from the roof or a wild beast treads on him. He who would have been sentenced to burning either falls into a fire or a serpent bites him. He who would have been sentenced to decapitation is either delivered to the government or robbers come upon him. He who would have been sentenced to strangulation is either drowned in the river or dies from suffocation. That is found in the Talmud Kethuboth. So you get the picture. The Jews were obsessed in knowing the blind man's guilt, and the disciples were no exception. What they were going to do with that information is a real mystery. Okay, so once you know why a person is blind, then what? How does that information serve you or others? The answer is that it doesn't. And we may be quick to point out that it was wrong for the disciples to ask those questions. But how many times do we do the same? How many times do we want to know details or information that doesn't serve us about so and so, and all we end up doing is just gossiping about someone or something? Thankfully, Jesus turns a dumb question into a teaching moment, and he tells them that God's name is going to be glorified through that blind man's suffering. He didn't talk about the cause of blindness, but rather what was going to come out of that situation. And with that, we come to the end of our nugget. Please join me tomorrow for the second part of the story of the blind man.